Hi, I've had this Breville Oracle Touch machine for about 3 years now, and I've been pretty happy with its performance. I think after 3 years, you really know what's good and what's not so good about any machine, so this would be a good time to do a review. I hope that what I tell you about here will help you make up your mind whether this could be the right machine for you and whether it justifies the rather hefty price tag that Breville put on it. So before I get into that review, I just want to sort of give a little bit of information about coffee machines. Now, in broad terms, there are 4 types of coffee machines that you can buy for home. The first is a fully manual machine, and this is like a scaled down version of what you would get at your local cafe. So with the manual machine, as the name implies, everything has to be done manually. So you need to grind the coffee, usually in a separate machine. You need to tamp that correctly into the portafilter. You need to lock that into the group head, push a button, and then while that's extracting, you're going to get some milk in a jug and you're going to put that under a steam wand and you're going to steam that and texture it just to the right amount. And when you put those two together, you'll finish up with a lovely latte, as good as you could get at your cafe, on the condition that you really understand how to use everything properly. And that's the problem, I guess, with manual machines. Next, then, you have the pod type system. So this is like your Nespresso capsule system. And with those, you simply just pop a capsule in the top of the machine, push a button, and out comes the brew. And there's usually some sort of wand for texturing milk, or maybe a little milk reservoir that textures the milk for you. Next, after that, you've then got the fully automatic machine. So this is that wonderful machine where you get up in the morning, push a button, and magically out pops a latte at the bottom of the machine. And lastly, you've then got this, which is what we would call a semi-automatic machine. So with this machine, some of the functions are performed automatically by the machine, such as grinding the beans and texturing the milk. And other functions need to be done by the operator, such as moving the group handle from the grinder onto the group head. So why would you pay a lot of money for a machine like this when for the same money, or sometimes even less, you could get a fully automatic machine? Well, the answer to that question lies in the quality of the coffee. So if you want to get a coffee that's as good as any you'll get in a cafe, you must have one thing, and that is you need to have a system that incorporates what's called a group head and a portafilter. And so basically under that system, as you'll see in a cafe, you put the ground coffee into a basket inside the portafilter. The portafilter then gets locked into the group head, and then the magic begins. And by that what I mean is hot water at a very controlled temperature is pushed under pressure through those ground beans, and that extracts perfectly all of the beautiful coffee oils out of those beans. And that's where you get that wonderful coffee flavor and also the smell. The other component to it, of course, is the milk frothing, and that's done with a steam wand on the side of the machine. On a commercial machine, there's a great big boiler that produces steam, and that blasts the steam into the milk, and the operator will turn a knob to control the amount of steam that comes out, and they'll texture the milk. Now, without that sort of a system, you will not get the same quality of coffee brew that you can get out of a machine in a cafe. So maybe that doesn't matter to you too much. Maybe you're willing to compromise on the quality of the coffee and the mouthfeel. If that's the case, then you probably don't need to spend the sort of money that you need to spend to buy one of these. But I'm just calling that out because I think it's important to note, and how this has played out for me over the years. I've owned many machines of all different shapes and sizes and different technologies over the last 25 years. And what I found is that if the coffee is not as good as what I can get in a cafe, what typically happens is I'll get a new machine, I'll set it up, the novelty is there for the first week and I use it every day religiously. But then after a week I start to sort of think, this coffee is not quite as good as I get from my cafe down the road. I think I might just go and buy one today. And pretty soon that machine just gets left in the corner of the kitchen, and it gathers dust, and eventually it gets listed on eBay as an unwanted toy. So if that happens, to my mind, that's just dead money. I mean, you've spent money on that machine, you won't get the same amount back that you paid for it, and you won't ever recoup the cost of that machine because you're not getting the benefit of avoiding the cost of buying coffee every day at the cafe. So with this machine, every day I get up and I make 2 coffees, one for myself, one for my wife, and we take those to work and we avoid buying a coffee at the cafe. Now the coffees I make out of this machine, they cost about 60 cents each, as opposed to the coffees that we would buy at the local cafe, which cost typically about $5.60. So every day that we use this machine, we're saving ourselves approximately $10. We don't use it on Saturdays. We always buy a coffee on Saturdays because we're out buying our groceries. So 6 days of the week, we're avoiding that cost of coffee at the cafe. That's about $60 a week that we save. And over a year, that really adds up. So over a year, that's over $3,000 that this machine saves us, which means effectively this machine paid for itself after the first year of use. And for the past 2 years, we've now had money in the bank as a result of owning this machine. So that's something really important to consider when you think about the cost of the machine. There's only going to be a saving if you use it. And if the coffee is not up to snuff and you don't use it every day, you go and buy coffee, then you'll never get a recovery of the cost that you spent. So that's enough of an introduction. Let's get into the actual machine itself and the details of that. And the first thing that I will point out to you about this machine is that it has a wooden handle here on that portafilter. Now that is not a standard item. That wooden handle is made of actually a very nice piece of olive wood. And the reason that's on there is because after, I think it was about the end of the second year that I had the machine, the original handle from Breville actually cracked and kind of disintegrated one day when I was trying to lock it into the group head. And I put that down to the fact that it's constantly being heated and cooled every day, and the hard plastic handle, Bakelite handle that they put on there, I think over time it just basically degraded from the continuous heating and cooling and the stress of being locked in every day. One day it just disintegrated. Anyway, luckily I looked on the internet and I found there's a guy over in West Australia who turns these wonderful timber handles to go with coffee machines. So I ordered that, and it was very easy to fit. You just basically glue the basket back into the handle, and I think it looks really good. In fact, I would recommend to Breville that maybe they consider doing these machines with timber handles, because yeah, they just look so great. And you know, let's face it, timber doesn't mind being heated and cooled every day, so it's going to be, you know, much more durable and in the long term. Anyway, that explains why that handle is there, and that's the first, I guess, negative about the machine possibly, is that the handles don't last as long as the machine lasts. So coming to the top here, that's the hopper for your beans. And you'll notice that with this hopper, it's pretty shallow. It doesn't hold a large volume of beans, so you'll find yourself having to top that up. I have to top it up every week or two, right? There is a reason for this, and it's a good reason, I think. The Breville engineers realised that most of these machines are not going to be on an open bench like this one is here. They're going to finish up on a bench with over-bench cupboards in a kitchen. And this is designed so it will just fit underneath your cupboards in a standard kitchen configuration. I think that was a good idea because I lived in a house before this one where every inch of bench space had cupboard over it. And if it wasn't for that design, we wouldn't have been able to get this machine to fit anywhere. Okay, so the next feature I want to talk about is not something you can visually see here in front of you, but it's very important to understand. So inside here, there are 2 boilers, 2 separate boilers, and 2 what they call PIDs, which are glorified thermostats, basically, that control the water temperature of those boilers. Now, this is unusual in a home machine. Most home machines that you buy don't have boilers in them. They actually have a thing called a thermoblock, and a thermoblock is just a big chunk of steel that gets heated up, and then there's a small channel that runs through that steel, and the water passes through the channel and picks up the heat of the steel, so it gets hot as it goes through. And the idea of that is that it can continuously produce hot water at steam temperature. However, the reality of those things is that they don't really do that. If you've ever used one, what you'll notice is that they tend to pulse, and they make a bit of a ticking noise as they work, and they go pit, 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 and you'll get a squirt of hot water, and then a break, and then another squirt of hot water. rather than continuous hot water. And this can be a problem in the coffee brewing process, because what you really need to get a good pour through the group head is actually continuous water under pressure. And you can only achieve that if you've actually got a boiler. Why do you have two boilers? Well, the reason you have two boilers is because if you think about it, the water temperature that you need for brewing perfect coffee is around about 93 degrees. It's not boiling. Whereas the water that you need for steaming needs to be boiling, because you need to have steam. So if you only had one boiler, it means that you couldn't do both functions at the same time. You could do your brew at 93 degrees, and then you would have to heat the water up a bit higher to get steam and then make steam. So by having two boilers, it means you can actually be pulling the shot while you're steaming and texturing your milk. So that's why there's two of them, and they need to be independently controlled at the right temperature. So this is a really good feature, a really strong feature of the Breville Oracle, is that it has the dual boilers and the dual controllers, so you get the perfect temperature of water, whether it be for pulling the shot or texturing your milk. So that's that. Now, the next thing is that you've got a programmable display on here. So this display, you probably can't see it very well from that distance, but in here I won't go into all the details, but it enables you to set up and configure exactly the perfect coffee for yourself. So you can control things like the temperature and the amount of steam that you get and the texturing of the milk. You can even program the time that it comes on, the time of day, so you can set this up so that it turns on just before you get out of bed, so that it's already hot and ready to go once you get out of bed and you're feeling like a coffee to wake you up. So that is another great feature of this machine. It's very easy to operate. It's a nice coloured LED display, LCD display I should say, and very easy to use, quite intuitive. So there's that as well, which is I think a good feature. So once we've covered that, then you get down to things like what's below the deck here. And there's a nice little thing in here that I want to show you that, I mean, it's not a big thing, but it makes a big difference when you're using it. So underneath the deck here, you've got a little compartment that stores all the tools that you need for cleaning and maintenance. But also down there, you've got this little thing, which is what I call a jockey wheel. Now this machine's pretty heavy. It weighs, I don't know what it weighs, but I'd say it would weigh at least probably 10 to 15 kilos. So you can really strain your back trying to lift this off a bench top. So you really don't want to be doing that. And the clever engineers at Breville thought about that, and so what they did was they added this little jockey wheel down here, and when I turn this wheel, the machine lifts up a little bit off the bench, and now that I've locked it into position, it's now suspended on three wheels. So there's a wheel here at the front under that knob, and then there's two wheels at the back. So you've got this kind of tricycle type configuration, and once I've done that, I can now move this freely around the bench without straining my back. Very easy to move, and I can move it right around. I can move it right through 360 degrees if I want to. And in fact, what I will do is I'll move this around at the moment so that you can see the back, because I want to just show you in here where the water reservoir is. So at the back here we've got this water reservoir. Unclip that and pull it out. And that's the reservoir there. I think it holds about 3 to 4 litres of water when it's full. It lasts me for a couple of weeks, and then I have to top it up. So it's not a bad size. But having said that, you can imagine that this would be a real nuisance, especially if you had cupboards over the top of it, if you had to get that out and top it up every day. So again, clever piece of engineering to solve that problem from Breville. I'll just set this up the right way again. At the front here, you've got this little trapdoor, and when I push down on that, it pops up, and there's a nice big channel in here where you can pour water in, and that water finds its way down into the reservoir at the back. So no need to pull the machine out to top it up. Just pour the water in the top, put the flap back down, job done. So another great feature there from Breville. I'll just put that back down. As I said, all your tools sit in this little compartment tray underneath. put the base back in there so it's ready to go. And the other thing about it is that you've got a grinder on the side here which is adjustable. So there's a knob on the side here that controls how fine the grind is, and the grind texture is very important to the quality of the brew that comes out of your machine. So you want to have a grind that is set such that the water comes through at just the right speed and you get just the right amount of coffee extracted from the grinds that are in the portafilter. So there's a rule of thumb around that. Basically it says that if you've got 10 grams of coffee in the portafilter, you should get 20 grams of liquid come out of the bottom of the machine. So with this one, I always use the double basket. So that's the big basket I've got in there. And the reason I do that is because I like my coffee fairly strong, and so does my wife. So I think this basket holds around about 20 grams when it's full. And so we want to see about 40 grams or 40 mils, if you like, it's the same thing, of liquid come out. And when I first set the machine up, I measured all these things and checked them. And you know, you need to do a little bit of tweaking just to get the right amount of grind, the right texture of grind in the portafilter. And you achieve that by turning this knob on the side of the machine. As you turn it clockwise, there's a conical burr grinder in there, and that basically brings the burrs closer together, so you get a finer grind the more you turn it clockwise. And conversely, if you turn it anti-clockwise, then you get a coarser grind. And of course, if you can imagine, the coarser the grind, the more quickly the water will flow through it, and the finer the grind, the more slowly the water will flow through it. And the speed that the water goes through determines, you know, how much oil is extracted out of the beans, and you know what the consistency of the shot is. So you need to get it, you need to tweak it a little bit till you get it right. And the other thing to bear in mind is that the coffee beans themselves, it varies from one bean to another and one roast to another, and even the same coffee beans one day to another, because what happens is when they're sitting in the hopper for several days, they start to dry out, and as they dry out, you'll find that the pour moves through quicker and you get less extraction, so you may need to tighten up the grind a little bit to compensate for that. So that's a little pro tip on getting the right extraction. So I think that's about it. I've covered off most of the features there that you need to know about. So I think maybe now might be a good time to make that coffee that I've been hanging out for today. So I'll get my milk and things together, and we'll get that made. And I'll do that with the camera on, so you can learn some of the little tricks that I've learned about how to get things just right, dialed in with this machine, so you get the perfect brew. Okay, so before you start making coffee, I think there's a couple of little tips that I want to pass on. First thing is your milk needs to be cold. So I always use a stainless steel jug, which I keep the jug in the fridge, so the jug itself is cold. So when I pour the cold milk into the jug, it doesn't strip all the cold out of the milk. You want to have it cold because it sounds counterintuitive, but it turns out that cold milk actually, in the process of warming up with the steam, actually textures a lot better than warm milk does. It's a lot easier to get a good microfoam happening in cold milk than it is in warm milk. So I always find use cold milk and you'll get a better result. Now the second thing is, I always like to preheat my cup. So I boil some water and I fill the cup with that before I start, so that, again, the idea is you don't want to be putting nice hot coffee into a cold cup, because the coffee is going to go cold as soon as it hits the walls of the cup, and you want it to be nice and hot when you're drinking it. So I always preheat that. Now, the top of the machine is a warmer, a cup warmer, so you can put your cups on top of the machine. But I guess the reason I don't do that is I don't like leaving my cups out in the open all the time, and also I got into this habit when, as I said once before, where we used to live, this used to be under a bench top, and the cup was actually taller than the hopper, the bean hopper, and so the cups wouldn't fit under the bench. So I got out of the habit of using that cup warmer there, but there is a cup warmer there, and you can just leave your cups inverted on that warmer, and they'll warm up in the morning when the machine warms up. So that's an option as well. But I find it works just as well to pour some boiling water out of the jug into the cup and heat the cup up, and then I know it's piping hot. So that's that. And then when you're ready to go, you just empty that out and stick it under the group head. Now, the process we're going to follow, basically I'll just tap that. It's a touch screen, by the way. I'll just tap that to bring that up, and I'll go to my favourite selection. So I've got a coffee brewed that I've programmed in there, and that's the one I use every day. So it's good to be consistent and know that you're going to get the same result every day. So the first thing we need to do, because the group handle has been sitting in the group head while the machine's warming up, we know that this is nice and hot, and that's good too, because we don't want to be putting coffee into a cold basket. So the first step is we put that under the grinder and lock that in there, and we hit the button here, and that will grind. Now this is going to make a lot of noise, so you probably can't hear what I'm saying, so we'll just wait till that finishes. Ding, that's a good sign. Now when we pull that out of there and we have a look at it, it's sometimes you'll get some loose coffee on the top. It's not necessarily perfectly tamped flat, and they say that you should have a perfectly tamped basket of coffee, otherwise you can get an inconsistent pour. And so that's why I have this. So this is another accessory that I've purchased. It's just a commercial tamper, and I always put that into the top of the basket, and I don't put any pressure on it. I just let it turn around under its own weight, because I'm not wanting to change how tightly packed that puck is. I just want to smooth it off, so that's why I use that. You could get away without doing that, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I like to know that it's flat. The other thing to note here is how far down into the basket the top of the coffee is. I would say it's probably about maybe 4 millimeters. You need to have it somewhere around that gap, because when this locks into the group head, what we want to achieve is we want to have, up inside the group head, there's a mesh where the water comes out, and we want that mesh to be just shy of touching the coffee. And when we do that, we get the best extraction. So it's important to have this at the right height, and that is adjustable. It's not an easy adjustment to make, but it is adjustable. And I may do another video on how to do that, because I did have to tweak that a little bit when I first got the machine, and it's something that's worth knowing. But anyway, that's how it should look when it goes into the group head. So we pop it in there, and that's good to go. But we're not going to hit the button on that just yet, because we need to get our milk right set up. So I'll just move this cup out of the way. In this jug here, I've got the milk, as I said. I could just stick the wand in there and push a button, but what you really should do is you should purge the wand, because inside that wand there's going to be some old mucky water potentially, and at the very least it's going to be cold water, and we don't want cold water coming out, we want steam. So how we do that, you just push the button there and you let that steam for a little bit till you see it, rising up. That looks pretty good. So now we've got nice steam coming out of there. We can then stick that into our jug of milk, pop that down there, and hit the button again. And again, this is going to make a bit of noise, so I don't know whether you'll be able to hear what I'm saying, but that is now making a perfect microphone, and I don't have to touch it. It's all automatic. So this is a really great feature of this machine. It has a automatic milk frother system that actually works and makes a beautiful microphone. Now, I'm not a barista by trade, and I'm certainly not a latte artist, so I'm not going to do this fantastic latte art for you, but I imagine someone who was skilled at that sort of thing would be able to produce quite a fine latte art with the textured milk that comes out of this machine. So now that's happening, of course we don't need to wait anymore for that to finish. We can actually start the brew. So I can put the cup underneath the brew head there, push the brew button, and as I said, because we've got two boilers working independently, both those functions can be happening at the same time. And I can see the coffee coming out of there now. You probably can't, but you get a feel for this, and you'll be able to see, you know, what speed that coffee's coming out. I'm going to take a photo, which I'll put on the put up on this video as well, of that coffee coming out of the group head, so you get an idea of what it looks like. But yeah, you'll know whether it's coming out at the right. You can tell by the speed, and also obviously the volume in the bottom of the cup, whether you've got the right setting there on the grind. And if, as I said, if it needs to be tightened up, you just turn the knob here and dial it in till it's just how you want it. Okay, so those two processes are finished. We've got our coffee shot in the bottom there. It looks good. What's it smell like? Oh, heaven. Get my dish rag, and I'm going to take that out of here. I always put this cloth underneath that because that tends to drip on your bench top like that. And you need to wipe that off. That's the first thing you need to do there. Give it a good wipe to get rid of any caked on milk that's on there. And this has another little feature. When I push this back down, it'll purge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 shots. So that just gets any milk that was stuck up in that wand out of the end of the wand, because that's the real problem with these sorts of automatic systems, is you can finish up with stale milk inside the wand, and then, you know, it taints the flavour of your coffee. So that's now purged itself, which is good. And one last thing also that I forgot to mention, on the very tip of the steam wand, you'll notice that there's a little protrusion there, that little spike. That's actually a thermometer, and it's constantly measuring the temperature of the milk as it is textured. This is important because one of the most common mistakes you make when you're manually texturing milk is to burn it by applying too much heat for too long. So this little thermometer ensures that the temperature doesn't get too high and you finish up with a perfect microfoam. And all I have to do is add the milk to the coffee. So I give that a bit of a tap on the bench top because you want to get any large bubbles out of there that may have accumulated. And you know, if this is working properly, when you swirl it around in the jug, it kind of looks like wet paint. And that's the sort of texture that you're after there. And then once I'm happy with that, I just pour that into the mug, and voila, my brew's ready. Let's try it. Bellissimo. Beautiful. Without a word of a lie, that coffee is as good as any coffee I can buy at any of the cafes in my town. And we do have some very good cafes where I live. We also have a number of coffee roasters where they roast beans in our town. So we're really spoilt for choice when it comes to coffee. And I can tell you that tastes as good as the coffee I would buy down the road. So there you go. I think I've covered all of the main points here. There's probably some features I've missed and other things, but I guess the real question to be answered after all of that is this machine worth the price they ask for it, which is, you know, it's over $3,000. So let's be frank, that's a lot of money for a home appliance that you may think, oh, we don't use it that often. Well, the key to answering the question is actually how much are you going to use it. So if you're going to use this every day, as we do, and make just 2 coffees a day, and we're not talking about a lot, but if you're substituting 2 coffees a day from the cafe with 2 coffees you've made out of this machine, then as I said, this machine will not only pay for itself, but after the first year, it starts putting money back in your pocket. In terms of the quality, well, you know, as I've said, the quality of the coffee is as good as anything you can get at the cafe. So there's no doubt in my mind that justifies the cost. Is it perfect? No, it's not. There's a few little niggly things with it, like the broken handle that I had and the fact that I had to buy a separate tamper to keep it level. Size of the hopper, you know, is a bit small. But really, you know, these are minor things, and I think this machine is worth every penny that they ask for it. So that's my conclusion. If you've got one, or you know someone who's got one and you have something to add to that, or you disagree, by all means let me know in the comments area. I hope this has been useful to you, this video. If you have any questions about something that I may not have covered and you'd like to know, drop me a line in the comment section and ask me, and I'll do my best to answer it. I've had this machine for a long time, so I'm pretty familiar with all the little intricacies of it, and if there's anything that I haven't answered, I can probably get you an answer for it. So have a great day, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video. Sorry, there was one last thing that I wanted to show you when I pulled this basket portafilter out of the machine. I wanted to show you the, if you can see this, I don't know, but inside that basket you can see the top of the coffee puck in there, and if there's enough detail in this shot, I don't know, but you'll be able to see the imprint of the mesh that is up inside that portafilter group head. So this is the mesh where the water comes blasting out under pressure, and you know if you've got the right height, the right level on the coffee, when you can just see that mesh impression there in the top of the puck. That's a good sign that it's just making contact with the coffee and that there's no airspace in there, and the coffee has swollen just a little bit from the level it started at, enough to touch that mesh. So that's how you want it to look. Now, as I said, that is adjustable, that height, and I will make another video just on how to adjust it.